Montgomery Community Media presents Small Business Network, brought to you by Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. SBN is also sponsored by M&T Bank and Leadership Montgomery.
Hello and welcome to Montgomery Community Media's Small Business Network at Home edition. I'm your host, Kelly Leonard. Each month, we bring the business community together to network, to collaborate, and to share best practices in an effort to stimulate and support regional economic development and small business flourishing. Thanks for tuning in with us. Joining me online is Montgomery County District 1 Council Member Andrew Friedson. Andrew serves as the Council's Planning, Housing, and Economic Development and Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committees, as well as the Council's lead for Parks. Previously, he served as a senior advisor and deputy chief of staff to Maryland's comptroller. He ran and reorganized the state's 529 college savings program and served on the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Kelly. Great to be here.
Likewise, and I know you are extremely busy, so I am so grateful for the opportunity to connect with you this way. Before we actually get into the meat of our conversation, I just want to ask, how are you doing? Like, how are you physically doing in light of what's going on around us?
I appreciate you asking. I am more than anything grateful for the problems that I have in comparison to most others. Fortunately, my family's doing okay. We're checking in with each other on a regular basis. I have a big family that's all local, and everybody is doing okay. And when you're in the type of role that I'm in, you have a window into the real challenges that are going on out in the community, and it puts into perspective some of the modest inconveniences and the increase in workload and what that really is in comparison to what others are facing.
Yeah, that's for sure. These are strange and interesting times. And as you know, the COVID crisis has had just a devastating impact on the county small business and our nonprofits. I'd be curious to know, what actions has the county taken to provide them some relief? And in light of that, what are some of the things that have worked really well? And then what challenges perhaps have we encountered as the county?
Oh, it is a tremendous question, a really important question. The first is, in moments of crisis, there are times of character for communities and for our county. And I really do think that we have stepped up. Residents have stepped up, businesses have stepped up, and our county has stepped up. The county council in particular, I'm very proud of what we were able to do. We took unprecedented action, one of the most significant COVID relief packages in a very quick period of time. In a span of about 10 days, we were able to put together a comprehensive package, one of the most significant packages anywhere in the region and among those in the country. It was $36.5 million. It encompassed small business and nonprofit grants. That process is going underway as we speak. It started at 20 million. We've added 5 million since then, with a particular focus on retail and storefront retail and restaurants that were hit disproportionately hard and early on in this process, though they are not the only businesses and nonprofits that have had challenges. It included 10 million in a partnership to meet the surge for our hospitals. Our nonprofit healthcare providers are some of our biggest employers in Montgomery County and are obviously on the front lines of this crisis. Cash assistance to families, food insecurity funding, partnerships with nonprofits to address the social safety net. We then have subsequently added in funding for a local production fund to manufacture local PPE equipment. We have been on the forefront working together with our local breweries to change their operations overnight and create hand sanitizer to provide our government and first responders. The state has followed our lead on that. The governor got national acclaim for that. Actually, Montgomery County is where that effort started, and I think we all should be very proud of that. And we have so many businesses and so many residents that we've been working together with to step up to help out, to help our first responders, to provide meals for our volunteer firefighters, for instance, who are on the front lines of this, to provide meals and resources to our local healthcare heroes who are on the front lines and putting themselves at risk every day. And I've been amazed, and what has made me so proud and grateful for our community is we've had more people reach out, or just as many people reach out to our office asking how they could help
Mm-hmm.
as asking how they could get help. Offering help and not just asking for help. And that is a window into the type of place that Montgomery County is, the type of community that I feel so privileged to have grown up in, lived my whole life in, and to represent on the county council. So that is the good news, and there's a lot of good news. We are better prepared, and we're better prepared for this than most other places, not only because our leaders in the public health space and in the emergency management space had been preparing for years for a scenario and for weeks and weeks for this particular scenario. Before our first case, the county council was briefed on what our preparations were before the first case occurred. And I think that needs to be said. It's a very important point. But there are challenges. There's no doubt about that. And I think the biggest challenge that we've had is moving at the speed at which this crisis requires. This is an issue that is plaguing everybody, but the speed at which the challenges have come move far faster than government is set up to move. And we're adapting to that as best as we can. The county executive branch and the county council have been working as collaboratively as we can. We brought in nonprofit providers to help us. We brought in businesses to support us. We've contracted in some areas, but we are trying to meet this need. And then we are part of a national and international crisis, all of whom are facing the same issues with PPE equipment and ventilators and surge and others. And dispersing funds that we've appropriated has been a major challenge. Setting up processes fast enough in order to meet the need has been a major challenge. And this real question, I pride myself, one of my most important legislative priorities last year, my first year in office, was a major a reorganization and rethinking of our oversight. And I work closely with council members Katz and Navarro, who I serve on the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee together with in the Audit Committee. And we really beefed up our oversight efforts. But and I believe strongly in that. But there's a balance at a time of crisis of making sure you do things perfectly and all the right way, and that you move swiftly enough to make sure that you can meet the moment you're in. That's not an easy balance to find. It's not one that we are normally accustomed, where the speed is as important as it is, as businesses are failing, as they're struggling desperately to keep their lights on, as nonprofits are deciding whether or not they are going to be able to provide the services that vulnerable residents desperately rely on a daily basis, as residents are struggling in the biggest economic collapse that we've seen, including the Great Recession, and at least since the Great Depression. And we may experience things that we didn't even see then. We need to be able to move quickly, and that balance is tough. And we're working as hard as we can, but there have been a lot of lumps along the way, and all of us are well intended. And I think some of the things that we try to do in order to make sure that we're directing the resources to the people who need them the most, those well-intended efforts sometimes can backfire. And sometimes you can set up so many hurdles in order to target the funding to particular places that you make it harder for the very people you're trying to target the resources towards to actually access them because of the bureaucratic challenges that you've created with the best of intentions. And that has been a big struggle and a big challenge, and finding that balance is still more of an art than a science, and something that we are trying to perfect that art, and we've got work to do, honestly, in order to do that. But I think we should be proud of the response that we've had and the way that we've stepped up, but recognize that this is a huge crisis, and all of us need to continue to work hard to meet it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was so much that you said in that short amount of time, so many things that I want to dig deeper at.
Yeah.
But I know we've got a short window of time to spend with one another. But, a couple of the challenges, you said that, the speed and dispersing the funds, so keeping up with the need. I'd be curious to know that, have we run out of money? Like, is there still money available for the business community? What is that looking
Yeah,
like?
we have not run out. Actually, the bigger challenge that we've had so far is that we have not dispersed the funds quickly enough, and the county council has been pushing the executive branch, frankly, to move faster, much faster, in terms of getting those funds out. So far, the grants were delayed in terms of getting the funds out. That disbursement has started to happen, which we're happy to see, and we're hoping that continues. They have added a tremendous number of personnel resources. We have upwards of 50 people working on this program right now to review applications and get that funding out. And we'll continue to work towards that and make sure that continues. But the funding has not run out, but the funding will run out. And we know that. We knew that going in. We will never be able to meet the need at the local level. I refer to this, I helped craft the proposal before the county council with a lot of support and collaboration with colleagues, both county council colleagues and the executive branch. And I compared it to the ambulance versus the hospital. And our business need help, and they need help immediately. But I want the county to serve as the ambulance, recognizing that an ambulance has limited tools. We can't do surgery. We don't have major equipment, but we can hopefully, as the government that is closest to the businesses and closest to the people, we can be more nimble to move quicker, realizing that eventually that runs out and that we need the hospital with far more resources and greater levers and tools and expertise to be able to take advantage of those. And so we really need the federal government to continue to step up and make sure that they added an additional second round of the PPP funding. We're going to need more of that, and we need direct support for state and local government, which we hope is part of this to address some of the revenue impacts that we have as well.
Gotcha. I love that analogy, the hospital and the ambulance. It's a great sort of word picture that we can all understand and perhaps relate to. The other thing that I want to ask you around I know you keep using the word grants. And of course, when I hear grants, I'm like, okay, grants, you never have to pay back. And so is that in fact so is this fund, is it grant money that the business community will not be paying back? And I guess a part of me selfishly as a county resident, I'm thinking, well, where's this money coming from? So can you dig in a little deeper?
Yeah, it's a great question. So they are grants. They're framed as conditional grants because you have to fulfill the requirements of the grant to spend it in the appropriate way. And so the county reserves the right to claw back the funding if you fail to meet those requirements. But they're pretty basic. You have to meet the loss threshold to receive the grant, unless it's and I can explain, we have a companion teleworking program up to $2,500 that the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation is going to be launching. There's a little bit of a challenge with implementing the telework as part of the initial grant program. And so we've just appropriated a $250,000 new appropriation to create a separate process to streamline and make that much simpler and easier for businesses and nonprofits who are switching over their operations to a telework process. If they needed to buy new equipment or subscribe to new technology, that this would allow them to offset some of those costs. But the general grants as part of the FEG program, the Public Health Emergency Grant Program, these are grants. They're conditional grants. They do not need to be paid back as long as they go to paying for operating expenses or to pay wages to workers, and that the other major requirements of the program are fulfilled. We recognize that adding loans to businesses would just cripple them down the road, and we didn't want to do that. And this was the major emphasis of the business community, that they not be grants. And actually, even at the federal level, those are conditional loans. And so they're SBA loans, and the loans will be forgiven if you meet the categories. Ours started as a grant, and our grant, as long as you fulfill it, theirs start as a loan and become a grant. And theirs can be much, much larger than ours can be. There certainly were a lot of issues with the PPP program in the first iteration. We're hoping that some of those issues are solved in the second iteration. And your question about where the money comes from,
Mm-hmm.
the money currently comes out of our reserves. The good news is that we have been really diligent at the county prior to me being there, and including my last year of getting the county's reserves to 10%. We have about $500 million in reserves. That money is not to be spent on new programs generally. It's supposed to be there in cases of an emergency. Certainly we are in one, but it's temporary, and really that funding is there to offset revenue losses long term. So if we miss our revenues by a significant amount, and we're already looking at $600 million potentially in losses for next year, we need to be able to weather that storm. But in the temporary period of time, which is very appropriate, we've been taking out of those reserves. And the $183 million that the county is receiving in direct aid as part of the original CARES funding at the federal level, the grants program can be refunded through that, along with the $10 million that we've already put into the hospital surge program, the food insecurity funding. We have a number of appropriations we've already made that are all eligible for federal funding. We appropriated them with language to say that we would try to get refunds and federal funding as part of that. But that $183 million is supposed to last till December 31st.
Oh.
And we're only a couple months in to this issue. We're actually less than 2 months in. March 5th was when the governor's emergency was declared. The 16th was when the stay-at-home order was decreed. So we need to be diligent as well. And so now I had requested, and I'm pleased to see that it is occurring, there's a collaborative effort between the council and the executive to work through basic categories, rules, and a thought process to create a strategic framework for how we're going to spend that $183 million in the most cost-effective way to make sure that we're doing it in a way that lasts, in a way that meets the needs that we have, and in a way that is reflective of the priorities in getting through this crisis.
So since we're on the subject of money and budget, I got to ask this question. I know the county executive has proposed a property tax increase in fiscal year 21 in the operating budget that he transmitted to the council back in March. Do you think the council will approve those increases?
Absolutely not. I don't think that. And the council, in an unprecedented manner, which reflects the unprecedented moment that we were in, sent a message to the public and to the county executive the day that he offered his budget, which he's required to do by the county charter, to say that we would not accept a property tax increase above the charter limit. That now is a time of crisis with deep uncertainty and anxiety for residents and businesses. Is a time for sound, prudent decision-making, not for tax increases. And the 8 of 9 council members signed on to that letter and message. I think made an emphatic statement to create a level of certainty at a time of uncertainty for many residents and businesses. I'm very pleased to join my colleagues in that effort. And we need to make sure that residents realize that we are not going to add to the economic uncertainty and anxiety that they have at this time of crisis. We have to make tough decisions. And there's no doubt this budget, which we are going through right now, is going to be extremely difficult. We are dealing with it in a prudent manner to come up with what we're referring to as a continuity of services budget. Mm-hmm. And once we get through this year, we're going to come back to this budget without making the severe cuts that we're probably going to need to make at a certain point based on the revenues and challenges that we face. Once we have a better idea of what the economic fallout, the revenue picture is going to look out, the federal funding is going to look like, and then make more prudent decisions then. So we'll be getting through this budget season, doing our obligation to pass a budget, which we will, a continuity of services budget, to make sure that we can meet the COVID crisis that we are in and continue core government services that we are required and have an obligation to do. And then we'll come back in the summer or early fall as this picture materializes and make the really difficult and challenging choices that we're going to make sure that we not just meet the moment that we're in, but are ready to meet the moments to follow. And that's what this really should be all about.
Absolutely. No, I agree wholeheartedly. And another thing that I'm thinking about is back to sort of when I think about what the council has done with the COVID related grant program. So much of that has been initiated by the county council. And I'm so grateful and thankful for you all's leadership. But as I follow you on social media, and I try not to do it when I'm hungry, because I know, lo and behold, Andrew's going to show up at a restaurant somewhere. I know there's been many ways that you've been personally sort of working behind the scenes to help small businesses. Can you share some of what you've been doing?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, we've been a troubleshooter. And as I've said, more than anything, I see myself as a problem solver first and a legislator second. And this moment has demonstrated the need for that more than anything. We are a caseworker on every issue that residents and businesses have, on the public health crisis, on the economic crisis, on just understanding the school system, understanding what's happening in the healthcare system. I mean, you name it, we are taking on a greater role than we've ever had to take on before. And I wear that as a badge of honor with our business community and with our residents and our nonprofit partners and community as well. I've also been meeting on a regular basis, working in close partnership with a lot of business groups, including all of our local chambers, on trying to meet the needs that our businesses have. And I've really tried to emphasize the need to support our local restaurants at this time of challenge and crisis. And I try to post as much as I can my meals. It's good that you can't see the bottom half of what I look like, because I like to say I'm focusing on eating local, but not low-cal, but trying to share some of my favorite meals from some of my favorite local places and support the folks in our service industry who aren't just people who employ our friends and neighbors. They are our friends and neighbors, and we need to make sure that we support them, because I sure want their doors to be open for when we can go and congregate together in person and enjoy the benefits. And we're also connecting. There are a number of our businesses who have changed their operations overnight, not just the breweries that I mentioned before who've changed their operations, but businesses that are now producing PPE equipment, masks, I mean, you name it. And we're trying to connect them as best as we can to the county. There are a number that have changed their entire supply chain and are now not just creating this equipment, but are connecting to suppliers that have this equipment. And we've been able to get the county to support local businesses to the tune of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of masks and gowns and others. My colleagues have done the same thing. The team in the executive branch that's leading this in emergency management and Ash Shetty and stepped up to help. And it's a challenge. I think the best part about that aspect is there is a huge amount of fraud that is happening, unfortunately. People don't let a crisis go to waste, and are taking advantage of governments needing to move very quickly with large amounts of money. And our teams have been doing a really good job of verifying and validating. But what I love is supporting local business gives an extra layer of accountability. When they live here, when they have their business operations here, when they employ people here, they have their reputation that's on the line as well. And so I think there's an added layer of security. We should go through the regular processes, that we should make sure that they're doing what they need to do. But I feel a little bit better knowing that we're getting some of this stuff from local businesses with local capacity. Not only are we putting that money and making sure that it stays in our community, but we are making sure that the taxpayers are being benefited as well. And the last thing I'll say about the restaurants, I've been trying, I have a public service announcement that has gone out. I've been trying to state the case, but lots of people use the delivery apps, and there's nothing wrong with the delivery apps. I don't begrudge them. I understand that they're easy to use and customer friendly, but I want people to know, because I think most people don't realize, 20 to 30% charges to businesses when you use those on average in general. And a 20-30% charge at a time when businesses are struggling really hurts.
Yeah.
And if you want your money to stay in the community, if you want to make sure that when you support a local restaurant, that the funds are actually going to support the folks in our service industry to pay their wages and to fuel our local restaurants to make sure that they can stick around and we can get out of this together, then pick up the phone, call the restaurant directly, check on their website to see if they allow for pickup and delivery directly. It can be the difference between them staying in business and not staying in business, from them keeping their lights on or not. And so I hope that folks are doing that. We're trying to make the case as much as we can.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I saw your PSA that it even dawned on me. You know, so many things that we think, oh, well, that's common sense, because we're all operating just, I don't want to say in survival mode, but it's like I don't think our brain is fully functioning right now. So we don't think about the longer term implication of our convenience of, oh, okay, I'll just pick up an app and reach out. But yeah, going direct. So I've been telling everyone about that ever since I saw your public service announcement. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. And I think it speaks to everything. And before you figure out your next purchase and going to Amazon, think about a local business that you can support. You know, these are little things, but little things can make a big impact, and it can literally be the difference between somebody having a job and somebody not, between a business staying afloat and a business going under. And, you know, if all of us can do a lot of little things, we can really change our community and get out of this better than where we started. And I am more convinced than ever that we have the capacity to solve the problems that we face, not just the individual challenges, but I think that the solution to this, the vaccine, the antidotes, the treatments, are going to come from Montgomery County. There's tremendous evidence that we are moving in that direction. And, you know, we can't all be heroes, but we all can be helpers. And we can figure out a way every day to help in some small way, a local business, help a neighbor, help the community, do something that's productive. And if we all do that, I think we'll be amazed at how much impact we can make.
Awesome. I agree wholeheartedly. So one last question for you. From the economic development perspective, what, I guess, one thing do you envision in terms of being Montgomery County's path forward?
I think we're better positioned than anywhere else on earth to get out of this. One, I think that there is a recognition now of the importance of biohealth, the importance of research and development, the funding levels that should have always been happening, but that now will be happening on government research and the residual benefits of what that government research could be, the businesses that will spring up as a result of this. I think we are as well positioned based on the connections to federal labs, the academic institutions, our robust biohealth industry. We lead the country in civilian health contracting. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. I also think that we have talent from all over the world, and we're going to attract more talent as a result of this added investment, and we're going to build off the greatest strength that we have, which is our people and the purpose-driven people that we have. So to me, I think the path forward is to invest in the assets that we have. I also think that this is a reset. And there have been some challenges with our business reputation and the competitiveness that we've had. Some of that was perception, some of that was reality, but perception is reality in economic development. And we got to reset. And if you didn't like how the race was going, getting a chance to start over and using the assets that we have, which I think are unrivaled anywhere in the world, this is an opportunity that we have to seize. It's not about the crisis. It's about getting through the crisis and then making sure that we take advantage of the assets that we have. And I would put our assets for economic development against anybody else, any other community, any other place in the world. And I think if we not just take those intentions and take those world-class assets, but actually utilize them in a way that really moves the needle to attract businesses, attract residents, and create jobs and investment, we'll be better off than we ever have in Montgomery County.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up this conversation, I just want to thank you for your time today, Councilmember Friedson. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for working tirelessly on the taxpayers' behalf. We definitely appreciate you. And on behalf of the entire Small Business Network team, I want to thank all of you all for tuning in, whether it's from your home office, or wherever you might be viewing. So until next time, be in good health and in high spirits.